Everyone, throughout history, kingdoms have risen to great power and then vanished entirely. These once thriving realms are now gone, but their stories and legacies remain. Here's 15 kingdoms that no longer exist. Number 15. The Kingdom of Hawaii. The Kingdom of Hawaii existed from 1795 to 1893 as a unified monarchy encompassing the Hawaiian Islands in the Central Pacific. Prior to unification, the islands were ruled by independent chiefs, each controlling their own territories. The consolidation of the islands into a single political entity was the work of King Kamehameha I, who began his campaigns of conquest in the late 18th century and completed unification in 1810. Hawaii's position in the Pacific made it a stop for ships engaged in trade, whaling, and exploration. Western contact began in earnest with the arrival of Captain James Cook in 1778, which opened the islands to a wave of European and American traders, missionaries, and settlers. This influx brought new technologies, weapons, and ideas, but also diseases to which the native Hawaiian population had no immunity. Epidemics drastically reduced the population over the 19th century. Kamehameha I established a centralized monarchy, codified laws, and promoted trade, and his successors continued those efforts. Under King Kamehameha II, Hawaiian kapu system, that's a traditional set of religious and social laws, was abolished, leading to significant cultural changes. Missionaries from New England arrived in 1820, introduced Christianity, literacy, and Western-style education. Hawaiian became a written language, and printing presses produced books, newspapers, and legal documents in the native tongue. By the mid-19th century, Hawaii had a constitutional monarchy modeled on European systems. The 1840 Constitution formalized governmental structures, including an elected legislature. King Kamehameha III and his successors negotiated treaties with major powers, and Hawaii was recognized internationally as an independent nation. Despite the achievements, though, the kingdom faced some growing pressure from foreign powers, especially the U.S., whose economic interests in Hawaii deepened. American businessmen and missionaries acquired land holdings and political influence, and in 1887 King Kalakaua was forced to sign the so-called Bayonet Constitution, which severely limited the monarchy's power and disenfranchised many native Hawaiians. The final blow came in 1893 when a group of Americans and European residents, supported by the U.S. Minister to Hawaii and backed by U.S. Marines, orchestrated the overthrow of the Queen. The monarchy was abolished, and a provisional government was established with the goal of annexing Hawaii to the United States. Despite petitions and protests from native Hawaiians, Hawaii was annexed by the U.S. in 1898 and became a U.S. territory. In 1959, it achieved statehood. Today, the legacy of the Kingdom of Hawaii is a source of pride and cultural identity for the native Hawaiians, as well as a point of political debate regarding sovereignty and historical injustices. Symbols of the monarchy, like the Hawaiian flag and the royal palace in Honolulu, remain visible reminders of an independent kingdom that once stood as a recognized nation among the powers of the world. Number 14. The Kingdom of Aksum. The Kingdom of Aksum, also known as the Aksumite Empire, was a powerful ancient kingdom that flourished in what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea from roughly the 1st century CE to the 7th century CE. It was one of the great civilizations of the ancient world and a major player in trade between the Roman Empire, India, and the rest of Africa. Its capital, Aksum, became a center of culture, commerce, and early Christianity in Africa. Its location near the Red Sea allowed it to control key trade routes that connected the Mediterranean with the Indian Ocean. Goods like ivory, gold, frankincense, myrrh, and exotic animal products flowed out of Aksum in exchange for textiles, metal goods, wine, and olive oil from the Roman and Byzantine worlds. The port city of Adulis served as the kingdom's main maritime hub where merchants from across the known world came to trade. The Aksumites were skilled builders and engineers. They're perhaps best remembered for their towering stone stelae. These are monolithic obelisks carved from single pieces of granite. Some of these reach heights of over 20 meters, and they serve as monumental markers for elite burials. The kingdom did also mint its own gold, silver, and bronze coins, which is significant because Aksum was one of the few ancient African states to develop its own currency system. These coins often bore inscriptions in Ge'ez, the kingdom's written language, and sometimes depicted Christian symbols after the conversion of its rulers. Religion played an important role in Aksum's history. Originally polytheistic, the kingdom converted to Christianity in the early 4th century CE under King Ezana. making it one of the earliest states in the world to officially adopt Christianity as a state religion. This helped solidify ties with the Christian Byzantine Empire and influence Aksumite art, architecture, and culture. Churches were built across the kingdom, and Ge'ez became the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which survives to this day. But the decline of Aksum began in the 7th century. The rise of Islamic powers in the Arabian Peninsula and North Africa disrupted the kingdom's Red Sea trade routes. Muslim control of key ports reduced Aksum's access to international trade, and over time, this economic hardship took its toll. Environmental factors like soil degradation from over-farming and possible climate changes may have compounded the decline. By the 10th century CE, the political heart of the Ethiopian highlands had shifted to other ruling dynasties, and Aksum's prominence faded. In the broader history of Africa, the Kingdom of Aksum stands out as an example of a highly developed, literate, and internationally connected civilization. Its achievements in trade, architecture, religion, and governance left a lasting mark on the Horn of Africa and the ancient world. Number 13. The Kingdom of Asturias. The Kingdom of Asturias was a Christian kingdom in the Iberian Peninsula that emerged in the Middle Ages. It lasted from 718 CE until roughly 924 CE. It was established in the northwestern region of present-day Spain, an area that proved critical in resisting the expansion of Muslim rule after the Umayyad conquest of most of the Iberian Peninsula in the early 8th century. Asturias is often regarded as the first Christian kingdom to form during the Reconquista, the centuries-long process of reclaiming territory from Muslim control. The kingdom's origins are traditionally traced to Pelagius or Pelayo, a nobleman of Visigothic descent that led a rebellion against Umayyad forces. According to early chronicles, Pelagius won a key victory at the Battle of Covadonga around 722 CE in the mountains of Asturias. This battle didn't dramatically alter the balance of power in Iberia, but it was significant as a symbolic start of organized Christian resistance. Geography here is characterized by rugged mountains, narrow valleys, and difficult access. It provided a natural defensive advantage, and while the kingdom was small compared to the powerful Umayyad Emirate to the south, its relative isolation allowed it to maintain autonomy and slowly expand into neighboring territories like Leon and Galicia, and parts of northern Portugal. Over time, Asturias incorporated both local populations and refugees from other Christian areas under Muslim rule. Culturally, the kingdom preserved many aspects of the Visigothic traditions, including law codes and ecclesiastical structures. Monasteries became important centers of learning and manuscript production, and the Asturian kings also developed distinctive architectural styles, often referred to as austere and pre-Romanesque, which can still be seen in churches near the capital Oviedo. The kingdom's political influence increased in the late 9th century under the King Alfonso III, who expanded its territory southward and encouraged the resettlement of conquered lands. By the early 10th century, Asturias had effectively been absorbed into Leon, although the Asturian identity remained strong in local governance and culture. The legacy of the kingdom lies in its role as a seedbed for the Reconquista and as an enduring symbol of Christian resistance in medieval Iberia. Its art, architecture, and chronicles are valuable sources for understanding the early medieval history of Spain and Portugal. Number 12. The Kingdom of Bohemia. The Kingdom of Bohemia. This was a Central European monarchy that existed in various forms from 1198 till about 1918, centered on the region now known as the Czech Republic. Its history is marked by periods of significant influence within the Holy Roman Empire and later the Habsburg monarchy. The title of King of Bohemia was first assumed by Ottokar I in 1198, and then in 1212 the Golden Bull of Sicily, issued by Emperor Frederick II, confirmed Bohemia's status as a hereditary kingdom within the Holy Roman Empire. During the 13th and 14th centuries, Bohemia experienced economic growth driven by silver mining and trade in Prague. Under the rule of Charles IV, Bohemia reached its peak political and cultural influence. Charles IV was elected Holy Roman Emperor, and Prague became an imperial capital. He founded Charles University in 1348, the first university in Central Europe, and commissioned significant architectural projects like the Charles Bridge and St. Vitus Cathedral. Religious tensions shaped much of Bohemia's later history. In the early 15th century, the teachings of the former Jan Hus inspired the Hussite movement, which called for changes in the Catholic Church. Hus's execution in 1415 sparked the Hussite Wars from about 1419 to 1434. That's a series of conflicts that deeply affected Bohemian society and weakened the power of the Catholic Church in the region. Bohemia eventually came under Habsburg rule in 1526 when Ferdinand I was elected king. The monarchy retained its own crown and institutions but became integrated into the broader Habsburg monarchy. The 30 Years' War began with the defenestration of Prague, an event in which Bohemian nobles resisted Habsburg attempts to reassert Catholic dominance. The subsequent defeat of the Bohemian forces at the Battle of White Mountain in 1620 led to harsh recatholicization and loss of political autonomy. Although Bohemia continued to exist as a legal entity within the Habsburg Empire, it was increasingly governed from Vienna. Industrialization in the 19th century transformed Bohemia into one of the most economically developed regions of the empire. Czech nationalism grew during this period, and it was fueled by cultural revival and demands for greater autonomy. The Kingdom of Bohemia ceased to exist as a political unit in 1918 when the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed at the end of World War I and Czechoslovakia was established. Today, Bohemia is a historical region within the Czech Republic, and its heritage is preserved in Prague's architecture, literature, and traditions. The kingdom's centuries-long history reflects the complex interplay of politics, religion, and culture in Central Europe. Number 11. The Kingdom of Sardinia. The Kingdom of Sardinia was a state in southern Europe that existed in various forms from the 14th century until the unification of Italy in the 19th. Its origins lie in the medieval period, when the island of Sardinia was divided into several independent regions, each ruled by its own judge or ruler. By the early 14th century, the Crown of Aragon, a powerful maritime kingdom based in what is now northeastern Spain, began to assert control over the island. In 1324, the Kingdom of Sardinia and Corsica was officially established as a possession of the Crown of Aragon, although effective control over Corsica was never achieved. The kingdom's territory included the island of Sardinia and, over time, lands on the Italian mainland, particularly in the Piedmont region. In the early modern period, Sardinia came under the rule of the Spanish Habsburgs as part of a wider Spanish empire. During this time, the island's economy remained largely agricultural, with grain, olives, and livestock forming the basis of production. Spanish influence was visible on the island's architecture, administration, and culture, though local traditions did persist. In 1720, as part of the complex territorial rearrangements following the War of the Spanish Succession, the island of Sardinia was exchanged for Sicily and given to the House of Savoy, rulers of the Duchy of Savoy and Piedmont. This transfer marked the beginning of a new phase in the kingdom's history. As the Savoyards shifted the kingdom's political center of gravity to the mainland in Turin, the Kingdom of Sardinia thus became a composite state with its administrative heart in northern Italy, while Sardinia itself remained an important but less central part of the realm. The kingdom played a central role in the Wars of Independence against Austria, securing alliances with France and expanding its territory to include Lombardy, Parma, Modena, Tuscany, and eventually the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. In 1861, following the conquest of most of the Italian peninsula, Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed King of Italy, and the Kingdom of Sardinia formally ceased to exist, replaced by the Kingdom of Italy. Although the name Kingdom of Sardinia disappeared, the island remained part of the new Italian state. Today, Sardinia retains a distinct identity, with its own language, Sardinian, traditions, and degree of political autonomy. Historically, the kingdom's transformation from a Mediterranean island realm into the nucleus of a united Italy shows its unique role in European history. Number 10. The Kingdom of Prussia. The Kingdom of Prussia was one of the most influential states in European history from its establishment in 1701 until its dissolution in 1918. Located in what is now parts of Germany, Poland, Russia, Lithuania, Denmark, Belgium, and the Czech Republic, Prussia grew from a relatively modest beginning into a great European power. Its origins trace back to the Duchy of Prussia, ruled by the Hohenzollern dynasty, which also controlled the Margraviate of Brandenburg within the Holy Roman Empire. In 1701, Elector Frederick III of Brandenburg crowned himself king in Prussia as Frederick I in Königsberg, marking the birth of the kingdom. Over the next century, Prussia expanded its territories through warfare and marriage alliances, emerging as a leading Protestant power in a predominantly Catholic Europe. Under Frederick William I, the Soldier King, and his son Frederick II, known as Frederick the Great, Prussia became famous for its formidable army and centralized state apparatus. Frederick the Great's military campaigns in the War of Austrian Succession and the 7 Years' War secured Prussia's status as a major power. His reign also saw domestic reforms, including religious tolerance, legal codification, and the promotion of education. Prussia's leadership in the unification of Germany was cemented under King Wilhelm I and his Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. Through a series of wars, the Danish War of 1864, Austro-Prussian War in 1866, and Franco-Prussian War in 1870, Prussia defeated its rivals and unified most of Germany under its leadership. In 1871, Wilhelm I was proclaimed German Emperor in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, and the Kingdom of Prussia became the largest and most powerful state in the new German Empire, comprising about 2/3 of its territory. The kingdom's influence continued until the end of World War I, when the German monarchy was abolished in 1918. Prussia ceased to exist as a monarchy, becoming the Free State of Prussia within the Weimar Republic. In 1947, after World War II, Prussia was formally dissolved by the Allied Control Council due to its association with militarism. Prussia's legacy is complex. It's remembered for its military efficiency and administrative rigor, but also for its militarism that shaped much of history. Cities like Berlin, Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, and Potsdam were central to its culture and political life, and many of its institutions influenced modern governance in Germany and well beyond. Number 9. The Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. The Kingdom of the Two Sicilies was the largest and most populous of the Italian states before the unification of Italy in the 19th century. It existed from 1816 until 1861, covering the southern parts of the Italian peninsula and the island of Sicily. The kingdom was formed when King Ferdinand IV of Naples, who also ruled Sicily as Ferdinand III, merged the two crowns into a single state, following the defeat of Napoleon and the Congress of Vienna. The name Two Sicilies dates back to medieval times, when the Kingdom of Sicily was split into two separate entities, one based on the island itself, the other on the mainland territories often called the Kingdom of Naples. The unification of these two regions under one crown in 1816 was more a restoration of an old concept than an entirely new creation. The kingdom was ruled by the Bourbon dynasty, which sought to stabilize and modernize its administration after years of Napoleonic wars and foreign occupations. Naples, the capital, was a major cultural and economic hub, while Palermo remained an important regional center. The kingdom had a rich culture, including world-class opera houses, historical architecture, and archaeological treasures like Pompeii and Herculaneum. Economically, it was agriculturally oriented, with grain, citrus fruits, and olive oil as major products, alongside sulfur mining in Sicily. Social inequality was pronounced, with large estates controlled by wealthy landlords and much of the rural population living in poverty. Politically, the Bourbons maintained a highly centralized government, often resistant to liberal reforms. This stance alienated segments of the population, especially as nationalist sentiment grew during the mid-19th. Revolutionary uprisings in 1820–21 and again in 1848 reflect the growing discontent, though both were suppressed with outside assistance from Austria. By the late 1850s, the kingdom faced growing challenges from the movement for Italian unification. In 1860, the expedition of the Thousand, led by Giuseppe Garibaldi, landed in Sicily and began a campaign that quickly toppled Bourbon control. Garibaldi's forces crossed to the mainland, and after a series of victories, they entered Naples in September of 1860. A plebiscite held later that year overwhelmingly supported annexation to the Kingdom of Sardinia. The Kingdom of the Two Sicilies officially ceased to exist in 1861 with the proclamation of the Kingdom of Italy under Victor Emmanuel II. Today, the legacy of the kingdom is preserved in its culture, traditions, and historical memory, though opinions about Bourbon rule remain divided among historians and locals. Number 8. The Kingdom of Kongo. The Kingdom of Kongo was a large and influential African state that existed from the late 14th century until the early 20th. In the region that now encompasses northern Angola, the Western Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Republic of the Congo, and part of Gabon. At its height, Kongo was a centralized and highly organized political entity with a complex system of provinces, each governed by local leaders. The kingdom's origins are traced to around 1930, when several small Bantu-speaking communities along the Kongo River basin united under a central ruler. Kongo's capital, Mbanza-Kongo, became a thriving urban center, notable for its organized streets and stone buildings. The kingdom's economy was diverse, combining agriculture, including millet, bananas, and cassava, fishing, hunting, and regional trade. Kongo traded ivory, copper, and raffia cloth with neighboring states and coastal communities. European contact began in 1483 when the Portuguese explorers arrived, and relations between Kongo and Portugal were initially cooperative. In 1491, King Nzinga converted to Christianity, taking the name João I, and the faith spread rapidly among the elite. Churches were built and literacy in Portuguese and Latin was introduced alongside the Kongo language. However, over time the relationship became more exploitative. The transatlantic slave trade profoundly altered Kongo's economy and politics. Portuguese traders and their local allies captured and exported thousands of people from the region, creating instability and conflict. In the 17th century, Kongo reached a peak under King Garcia II, but soon suffered from internal divisions and external pressures. A decisive blow came in 1665 at the Battle of Mbuela, where Kongo's army was defeated by the Portuguese, and King Antonio I was killed. This loss triggered decades of civil war, weakening the kingdom's central authority. By the 19th century, Kongo's power had diminished. It became increasingly subject to Portuguese influence and later to European colonial ambitions during the scramble for Africa. In 1888, the last man at Kongo, recognized by the Portuguese, Pedro V, was deposed, and the kingdom's territory was absorbed into colonial Angola and the Congo Free State. While the political entity no longer exists, Kongo's cultural heritage, including its art, music, and traditions, remains influential in Central Africa and among African diaspora communities in the Americas. Moving on to number 7, the Kingdom of Burgundy. The Kingdom of Burgundy, also known in different periods as the Kingdom of Arles or the Second Kingdom of Burgundy, was a medieval realm in Western Europe that existed in various forms from the late 9th century until it was absorbed into the Holy Roman Empire in the 14th century. Its territory at different times included parts of what are now southeastern France, western Switzerland, and northwest Italy. The roots of the kingdom trace back to the collapse of the Carolingian Empire in the late 9th century. In 888 CE, Rudolf I was elected king of a realm that became to be called the Kingdom of Upper Burgundy. In 933, Upper Burgundy united with neighboring Kingdom of Lower Burgundy, forming the Kingdom of Arles, often still referred to as Burgundy. This unified kingdom was strategically located between France, Italy, and the German lands, giving it a key role in regional politics and trade. In 1032, the Kingdom of Burgundy was then incorporated into the Holy Roman Empire when Emperor Conrad II inherited the crown. While it retained the title of a separate kingdom, real political power shifted to local dukes, counts, and bishops. Over time, imperial control weakened, and the region became a patchwork of semi-independent territories. The Duchy of Burgundy, in particular, emerged as a powerful and culturally vibrant state in the late Middle Ages, though it was politically distinct from the Old Kingdom. By the 14th century, the idea of the Kingdom of Burgundy as an independent or even semi-autonomous entity had faded. Its territories were fully integrated into the complex feudal structure of the Holy Roman Empire, and the title of King of Burgundy became largely ceremonial. Number 6. The Kingdom of Navarre. The Kingdom of Navarre was a small but strategically important state that existed in the Western Pyrenees from the early 9th century until its effective dissolution in the early modern period. At its height, Navarre's territory straddled both sides of the mountains, encompassing parts of what are now northern Spain and southwestern France. Navarre originated as the Kingdom of Pamplona, formed around 824 CE when local Basque leaders successfully resisted the Muslim incursions. Over the next 2 centuries, the kingdom expanded under rulers like Sancho III, also known as Sancho the Great, who in the early 11th century controlled lands stretching across much of Christian Iberia. His reign marked the zenith of Navarre's power, and through marriage alliances, Navarre influenced neighboring kingdoms like Leon, Castile, and Aragon. Navarre's location along the pilgrimage route to Santiago de Compostela brought economic benefits as pilgrims and merchants traveled through its towns. The kingdom's culture reflected a blend of Basque traditions and broader European influences. However, after Sancho III's death in 1035, his territories were divided among his sons, leading to the loss of political dominance. In the following centuries, Navarre faced pressures from larger neighbors, particularly Castile and Aragon. Internal divisions and contested successions further weakened the kingdom. By the late 12th century, parts of Navarre north of the Pyrenees were contested by France, and in 1234 the crown passed to the French House of Champagne through inheritance. Navarre's dual presence on both sides of the Pyrenees became a source of vulnerability. In 1512, Ferdinand II of Aragon invaded and annexed the southern portion of Navarre to the Crown of Castile, integrating it into what would become Spain. The northern portion, known as Lower Navarre, remained under separate rule until it was incorporated into France in 1620 under Louis XIII. Number 5. The Kingdom of Galicia. The Kingdom of Galicia was a political entity in the northwest of the Iberian Peninsula that existed in various forms from the early Middle Ages until it was gradually absorbed into the Kingdom of Castile in the late medieval period. Its territory corresponds largely to the modern autonomous community of Galicia in Spain, along with parts of northern Portugal during some periods of its history. Galicia's origins as a kingdom dates back to the early 5th century, when the Suebi, a Germanic people, established an independent realm after the decline of Roman authority in Hispania. The Suebi Kingdom of Galicia lasted until about 585 CE, when it was incorporated into the Visigothic kingdom. Following the Muslim conquest of most of the Iberian Peninsula in the early 8th century, Galicia became under the control of Christian Kingdom of Asturias, serving as a frontier region in the struggle against Muslim-ruled Al-Andalus. By the late 9th century, Galicia had developed a distinct identity within the Christian north. In the year 910, when the Kingdom of Asturias was divided among the sons of King Alfonso III, Galicia became a separate kingdom under Ordoño II. Although often united with Leon under a single monarch, Galicia retained its own political and ecclesiastical institutions, including the powerful Archbishop of Santiago de Compostela. The city of Santiago became one of the most important destinations in medieval Europe after the supposed discovery of the relics of St. James the Apostle in the 9th century. The pilgrimage route, known as the Camino de Santiago, brought thousands of travelers from across the continent, fostering culture and economic connections. By the 15th century, Galicia's political autonomy had diminished. The Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella implemented policies to bring the region more firmly under the control of the Castilian crown. Over time, the kingdom ceased to function as an independent political unit, though the title King of Galicia continued to be used ceremonially by Spanish monarchs until the 19th century. Number 4. The Kingdom of Champa. The Kingdom of Champa was a collection of independent principalities that existed along the central and southern coast of present-day Vietnam from approximately the 2nd century CE until the year 1832, when it was annexed by the Vietnamese Nguyen dynasty. The Cham people, an Austronesian ethnic group, were the founders and rulers of this maritime kingdom. Champa's early history was influenced by Indian culture, likely through trade contacts with merchants from the Indian subcontinent. By the 4th century, Hinduism had become the dominant religion among the Cham elite, and Sanskrit was used in inscriptions. Cham architecture and sculpture, particularly the red brick temple towers known as Kalan, reflect a synthesis of indigenous traditions and Indian influences. The kingdom was organized into a series of semi-independent regions, each ruled by its own prince or king, but united by a shared culture and language. Its economy was heavily based on maritime trade, with Champa serving as an important link between China, Southeast Asia, and the Indian Ocean. Champa's history was marked by both alliances and conflicts, with its powerful neighbors, particularly the Chinese empires to the north and the Khmer Empire to the west. Periodic warfare with Dai Viet, the Vietnamese kingdom to the north, was a defining feature of its later history. Champa was able to resist Vietnamese expansion for centuries, but successive wars gradually eroded the territory. At its cultural height between the 9th and 15th centuries, Champa produced a remarkable artistic and architectural achievement, many of which survive at sites like Mysore, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. These temple complexes were dedicated to Hindu deities, particularly Shiva, and they served as religious and political centers. The turning point for Champa came in 1471, when Daivet forces captured and sacked the Cham capital of Vijaya, killing tens of thousands and forcing the Cham to retreat to their territories. Over the following centuries, Cham independence steadily diminished as Vietnamese settlement expanded southward. By the early 19th century, the remaining Cham were incorporated into the Nguyen dynasty's empire. Number 3. The Kingdom of Mysore. The Kingdom of Mysore was a powerful and strategically important state in southern India that existed from 1399 to 1947 and experienced a dramatic transformation in size, influence, and governance over its 5.5 centuries of existence. At various points, it was a small principality, a rapidly modernizing military power, a formidable opponent to the British East India Company, and later a princely state under British paramountcy. Its history reflects shifting political landscapes in the Indian subcontinent, the rise of regional powers, and the eventual integration of those kingdoms into modern India. The kingdom originated as a vassal state under the Vijayanagara Empire, a major South Indian power that dominated much of the Deccan Plateau during the late medieval period. In 1399, the Wadiyar, often anglicized as Wodiyar, dynasty took control of Mysore, establishing a capital at the city of Mysore in present-day Karnataka. Initially, the Wadiyars were minor rulers, their authority limited by the overarching power of the Vijayanagara. This situation began to change after the catastrophic Battle of Talikota in 1565, in which the empire was decisively defeated by a coalition of Deccan sultanates. As the empire faced fracture, Mysore gradually asserted more autonomy. By the 17th century, the Wadiyars had expanded their territory and wealth, building a stronger administrative structure and developing Mysore city into a center of governance. A major shift happened in the mid-18th century when real political power shifted away from the Wadiyars to their military commander, Hyder Ali. Hyder Ali's rise coincided with the expansion of British and French influence in India, and Mysore became a focal point of imperial rivalry. His conflicts with the British East India Company, particularly in southern India, were part of a broader contest for dominance between indigenous powers and European traders turned colonizers. The First Anglo-Mysore War ended in a stalemate that demonstrated Mysore's military strength, but the Second War, fought in alliance with the French, was more destructive. Hyder Ali died during this war in 1782 and his son Tipu Sultan succeeded him. Tipu Sultan became the Tiger of Mysore as one of the most famous and controversial figures in Indian history. A brilliant tactician and innovative administrator, Tipu conducted his father's modernization policies, established state-run industries, reformed taxation, and sought to limit the power of traditional elites who opposed his centralizing policies. He was also an ardent opponent of British expansion and engaged in 2 more wars with the East India Company, the Third and the Fourth Anglo-Mysore Wars. Under British oversight, Mysore underwent changes. The kingdom retained internal autonomy. It was increasingly shaped by colonial economic policies. The 19th century saw the expansion of cash crop agriculture, particularly coffee and silk, and the development of infrastructure like railways and roads. Mysore city developed into a model of planned urban growth with broad roads, public parks, and prominent civic buildings. The kingdom's economic and administrative reforms during this period were guided in part by its capable chief ministers, like Sir M. Vivesvarya, a pioneering engineer and statesman. Vivesvarya oversaw major irrigation projects, industrial initiatives, and infrastructure development that laid the groundwork for Mysore's reputation as one of the best administered princely states in India. Despite the prosperity of the early 20th century, though, the political climate was changing. The Indian independence movement gained momentum, and calls for democratic reforms grew louder. Mysore, like other princely states, faced increasing pressure to introduce representative institutions. In 1935, a legislative assembly was created, though the Wadiyars still retained significant authority. Number 2. The Kingdom of Lan Xang. The Kingdom of Lan Xang, often translated as the Kingdom of a Million Elephants, was one of Southeast Asia's great historic states, lasting for more than 350 years, from 1353 to 1707. At its height, it covered much of what is now Laos, along with parts of present-day Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Known for its military might, extensive use of elephants in warfare, and vibrant Buddhist culture, Lan Xang played a central role in the politics and trade of mainland Southeast Asia. Its origins are tied to the life of its founder, Fa Gum, a prince of the Lao people who was raised in the Khmer court of Angkor. In the early 14th century, Fa-Gum returned to his ancestral homeland with a Khmer army, conquering the fragmented Lao principalities along the Mekong River. In 1353, he crowned himself king in Luang Prabang, established Lan Xang as a unified kingdom, and the name Lan Xang reflected both a symbolic and practical truth. Elephants were essential to the kingdom's military power and agricultural life, and they became an enduring emblem of Lao identity. After Fa-Gum's reign, Lan Xang went through periods of consolidation and instability, shaped by succession disputes and shifting alliances. Despite occasional internal unrest, the kingdom remained a significant force, benefiting from its location along the Mekong River, which facilitated trade and communication. By the 15th century, Lan Xang had developed a distinctive Lao cultural identity, blending Buddhist religious life with local traditions, music, and literature. The kingdom's courts became patrons of the arts, commissioning temples, murals, palm leaf manuscripts, and ceremonial music that remained integral to Lao heritage. Lan Xang's most celebrated era came under the reign of King Setthathriath from 1548 to 1571. A skilled military strategist, he moved the capital from Luang Prabang to Viet Nay, a more centrally located city better suited for defense and governance. He fortified it extensively, building city walls and commissioning the construction of the Tat Luang Stupa, which remains the most important national monument in Laos. The kingdom's military strength owed much to its elephants. In Southeast Asian warfare, elephants were used both as a shock force and mobile command platforms, able to trample enemy formations and carry archers or musketeers into battle. Lan Xang's control over the elephant-rich territories made it a formidable opponent, and the sheer symbolic weight of its nickname, "A Million Elephants," reinforced its image as a power not to be taken lightly. Following Setthathriath's death, Lan Xang entered a turbulent period of succession and foreign interventions. In the late 16th century, the Burmese briefly occupied parts of the kingdom, but it managed to reassert its sovereignty under King Surinyavongsa. Surinyavongsa's reign is remembered as a golden age of stability, prosperity, and cultural flourishing. His court enforced strict moral codes, strengthened Buddhist institutions, and expanded diplomatic contacts with Vietnam, Siam, and European traders. Fragmentation made the Lao states vulnerable to outside pressures. In the 18th and 19th centuries, both Siam and Vietnam sought to exert influence over the Lao kingdoms, often through military intervention or by forcing them into tributary relationships. By the late 19th century, French colonial expansion into mainland Southeast Asia brought the territories under the control of French Indochina. Number 1. The Kingdom of Kush. The Kingdom of Kush was one of the most influential civilizations of the ancient Nile Valley, existing in various forms for more than 1,000 years and ruling over a huge territory that included what is now northern Sudan and southern Egypt. Kush's earliest phase emerged during Egypt's Middle Kingdom period around 2000 BCE, when the region of Nubia, rich in gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animal products, became strategically important to Egyptian rulers. For centuries, Egypt exerted influence over Nubia, sometimes through trade and sometimes by direct military occupation. By around 800 BCE, Kush had become a major regional power, strong enough to challenge a weakened Egypt. And this culminated in the so-called 25th dynasty of Egypt, during which Kushite kings conquered Egypt and ruled as pharaohs. The Kushite pharaohs brought a distinctly Nubian cultural flavor to Egypt's traditions. While they adopted many aspects of Egyptian religion and art, they also retained elements of their own heritage. Ultimately, though, the Kushite dynasty's rule over Egypt ended when the Assyrians invaded in the mid-7th century BCE, forcing the Kushite kings to retreat to their homeland. Despite losing Egypt, the Kingdom of Kush remained a formidable and wealthy state for centuries. Culturally, the Kingdom of Kush was a unique fusion of African and Egyptian traditions. Temples and palaces bore hieroglyphic inscriptions alongside Meroitic script, while the art depicted a blend of Egyptian stylistic conventions and local innovations. Royal burials took the form of pyramids, but Kushite pyramids were smaller, steeper, and more numerous than those in Egypt, with over 200 still standing today in sites like Meroe, Nuri, and El Kuru. Religion remained central to Kushite life, with Amun as chief deity, but other gods including lion-headed war deities and local fertility spirits held importance too. Trade was a lifeline of Kush prosperity. The kingdom exported gold, ivory, exotic animal skins, and slaves, while importing luxury goods like glassware, fine textiles, and wine from the Mediterranean world. The decline of the Kingdom of Kush began in the late 1st millennium CE. Several factors contributed: environmental degradation from overgrazing, linked to extensive iron smelting, shifting trade routes that bypassed the Nile corridor, and pressure from external powers. In the 4th century CE, the rising kingdom of Aksum to the southeast became Kush's most formidable rival. After Kush's fall, the region saw the rise of smaller Nubian Christian kingdoms in the medieval period, such as Nobatatia, Makuria, and Aludia, which preserved some of the cultural continuities with their Kushite predecessors. Yet the beauty of Kush's pyramids, temples, and artifacts left a legacy that still inspires archaeological and historical interest.